My name is Daniel, 32 years old. I worked an ordinary office job and built my life step by step. The crystal chandelier reflected in my wine glass. The high-end restaurant was filled with the sound of laughter and clinking cutlery. My corporate promotion was finally official after years of quiet dedication. My colleagues gathered around the long wooden table to celebrate. Standing right beside me was my wife, Olivia. She wore an elegant black dress and smiled brightly at the guests. To everyone in that room, we looked like the perfect couple. Olivia picked up her silver spoon and tapped her glass gently. The room fell silent as she cleared her throat.
A toast to Daniel, who worked so hard to reach the top.
Her voice was warm and sweet.
He spent 4 years sacrificing everything for his career and our family.
The crowd cheered and raised their glasses. I smiled politely and took a small sip of champagne. I had no idea that her toast was a performance. 10 minutes later, the dinner moved toward dessert. Olivia leaned closer to my ear.
Step into the hallway with me for a moment.
Her voice had suddenly lost all its warmth. I followed her down the quiet carpeted corridor toward the private lounge. The heavy wooden door shut behind us, cutting off the noise from the dining room. Olivia turned around instantly. Her bright smile was completely gone. She opened her leather handbag and pulled out a thick white folder. She slammed it firmly against my chest.
Read this and sign it.
I caught the folder before it hit the floor. I looked down at the black title printed on the cover page. It was a drafted agreement for legal separation and asset division. I opened the first page calmly. She was demanding 70% of our joint bank accounts and total ownership of our house. She was also requesting substantial monthly alimony payments starting immediately. I did not raise my voice. I did not scream or demand an explanation. Losing your temper only gives the enemy free information. Instead, I kept my face expressionless and met her cold eyes. Olivia scoffed at my silence.
Don't look at me like that, Daniel. I wasted 4 years of my youth sitting at home while you climbed the ladder.
She stepped closer and pointed a manicured finger at my chest.
You owe me this money for making me wait.
I noticed how carefully this document was drafted. A legal draft of this complexity required weeks of legal preparation. She had planned this exact timing for months. She waited for my promotion to maximize her financial demands. She mistook my quiet composure for helplessness. She thought I would be too shocked and embarrassed to fight back. I slowly closed the white folder. I looked at her with steady, unblinking eyes. I spoke in a low, measured tone. I will review these papers with a lawyer. Olivia laughed mockingly.
There is nothing to review. If you sign now, we can avoid a messy public scene.
She crossed her arms and glared at me.
Otherwise, I will tell your company management how you treat your wife.
It was a direct threat aimed at my professional reputation. I adjusted my suit jacket without showing a single tremor in my hands. I put the folder neatly under my arm. I looked at her one last time before turning away. I walked back into the dining room as if nothing had happened. I finished the dinner, thanked my executive manager, and paid the bill. Olivia stayed quiet during the ride home, sitting in the passenger seat with her back turned. When we arrived at our suburban house, the living room lights were soft. Our 4-year-old son, Leo, was sleeping peacefully in his bedroom. I walked into his room and looked down at his tiny face. I felt a heavy ache in my chest. I had raised this boy from the second he was born. I stayed up with him during late-night fevers and taught him how to walk. I swore that night to protect him no matter what happened next. While Olivia went straight to the master bedroom, I walked into my private study. I locked the door quietly from the inside. I sat down at my desk and opened the legal demand folder again. I turned to the financial breakdown attached at the back. Olivia had listed several private accounts that I had never seen before. She was claiming they were personal gifts from her wealthy family. That statement felt completely wrong. Her parents lived on a modest pension and could not afford such gifts. I turned on my laptop and opened our home filing system. I began searching through archived digital documents from 4 years ago. I was looking for routine insurance claims from Leo's birth. My goal was simple: I needed to map out every single asset and liability before taking legal action. As I scanned the old hospital receipts, a small PDF document caught my eye. It was an old blood type classification report from the pediatric clinic. I opened the file and checked the medical details. My blood type is O positive. Olivia's blood type is O positive as well. I looked closely at the bold letters printed on Leo's newborn lab report. The blood record listed Leo's blood type as AB positive. My hands froze on the desk. It is biologically impossible for two O-type parents to have an AB-type child. I stared at the computer screen in complete silence. 4 years of my life flashed before my eyes. The toast at the restaurant, her sudden demand for 70% of my wealth, her rush to force a quick settlement. Everything began to connect like pieces of a dark puzzle. This was not just an ambitious divorce attempt. This was a massive cover-up. I took a deep, steady breath to calm my racing heart. I did not rush into the bedroom to scream at her. Confronting a liar without ironclad proof is a rookie mistake. I opened a new encrypted browser tab. I searched for a certified forensic DNA testing clinic in the city. I filled out an online application for an expedited private paternity test. I ordered a discreet home sampling kit to be delivered the next morning. I closed the laptop and looked out the window into the dark night. Olivia thought she was playing a simple game of leverage. She had no idea that I was about to dismantle her entire life piece by piece. Early the next morning, I stepped into Leo's room while Olivia was still asleep. I gently collected the genetic samples required for the lab analysis. I sealed the courier envelope and dropped it off directly at the lab terminal. Then I made a phone call to a private investigator specializing in financial fraud. I needed to know who was behind those secret private accounts. 3 days later, my phone vibrated on my desk at work. An urgent email notification appeared from the forensic lab. The subject line read, "Official Paternity Audit Results." My hand stayed completely steady as I moved the mouse cursor to click the file. The official lab document loaded on my laptop screen. I scrolled directly down to the biological summary section. The bold text at the bottom left no room for doubt. The probability of biological paternity was 0.00%. I was definitively excluded as the biological father of Leo. A cold sensation washed through my chest. I did not gasp or drop my head. The truth was finally documented in black and white. 4 years of my life had been built on a calculating lie. I stood up and walked to the doorway of Leo's bedroom. I watched his small shoulders rise and fall as he slept. My heart ached for the innocent child in that bed. I had held his hand during his first steps. I had stayed awake through every midnight fever. He was completely blameless in this deception. My cold resolve hardened instantly. My fight was not with the child. My fight was with the woman who orchestrated this fraud. I saved the digital PDF to an encrypted thumb drive. I printed 3 physical copies on my laser printer. I locked the papers inside my heavy floor safe. Then I deleted the temporary files from my computer cache. The next step required absolute tactical patience. Showing your hand too early destroys your strategic advantage. The next morning, I walked down into the kitchen for breakfast. Olivia was sitting at the marble counter sipping espresso. She looked at me with an arrogant expression.
Did you finally review the separation demand?
Her voice carried a mocking edge. I poured myself a cup of black coffee without looking at her. I kept my posture relaxed and my voice level. I told her that my legal counsel was reviewing the asset schedules. Olivia let out a short laugh.
Do not waste your hard-earned money on expensive lawyers.
She leaned forward against the kitchen counter.
No judge will side with a workaholic husband.
She believed my quiet demeanor was a sign of surrender. She mistook my self-control for total helplessness. I took a slow sip of my coffee and nodded slightly. I let her enjoy her false sense of victory. An arrogant opponent makes sloppy mistakes. After breakfast, I called my manager and took a personal leave day. I drove directly to a high-rise office building in the financial district. I had scheduled a consultation with a top forensic financial auditor. We sat down in a private conference room overlooking the harbor. I handed him a copy of Olivia's legal asset disclosure. I highlighted the 4 private bank accounts listed under her maiden name. I explained her claim that these funds were family gifts. The auditor looked at the account numbers with a sharp focus. He promised to trace every incoming transaction over the last 4 years. 2 hours later, I met with a private investigator across town. He was a former fraud detective with decades of surveillance experience. I provided him with the certified DNA paternity audit report. I gave him Olivia's employment history from the local medical clinic. I tasked him with identifying every senior medical staff member from 4 years ago. I wired both professionals their full retainer fees immediately. I was building an airtight case before striking back. 48 hours passed in quiet anticipation. I continued to act like a defeated husband at home. I ate dinner in silence and focused on spending time with Leo. Olivia spent her evenings whispering on her phone in the backyard. She assumed I was privately panicking about my corporate reputation. On Thursday afternoon, my phone chimed with an encrypted email alert. The forensic auditor had delivered his preliminary financial trace. I opened the attached spreadsheet file on my laptop. The financial data revealed a crystal-clear pattern. The 4 private accounts had received exactly $5,000 every month. The transfers had started precisely 4 years ago. The money did not originate from her parents. The funds came from a corporate entity named Vance Medical Consulting. 30 minutes later, the private investigator called my phone. He had cross-referenced the corporate registration records. Vance Medical Consulting was owned entirely by Dr. Richard Vance. Dr. Richard Vance was the former senior medical director at Olivia's old clinic. He was a prominent orthopedic surgeon with a wealthy family background. Every piece of the dark puzzle fell into place. 4 years ago, Olivia had an ongoing affair with her director. When she became pregnant, Dr. Vance faced a devastating scandal. To protect his medical reputation and wealthy marriage, he set up monthly payoffs. Olivia accepted the financial hush money to support his child. Then she married me to secure a respectable family cover story. I had paid for the house, the health care, and the daily expenses. Meanwhile, Olivia was stashing away Vance's monthly payoff cash. Now that I had earned a corporate promotion, she wanted even more. She planned to take 70% of my joint assets to complete her haul. She believed Dr. Vance would remain hidden in the shadows forever. A cold smile touched my lips in the quiet office. Her greed had blinded her to her own vulnerabilities. That evening, I returned home at my usual time. Olivia met me near the front entrance of the house. She held out a fresh copy of the separation agreement.
Your time is up, Daniel.
Her voice was cold and demanding.
Sign this paper tonight, or I email your executive board tomorrow.
I looked into her eyes without a hint of fear. I spoke with complete calm and authority. I told her that we should schedule a formal legal conference. I suggested meeting at our attorney's office in 3 days. Olivia smirked, assuming I had finally broken under pressure.
I will tell my lawyer to prepare the final signature pages.
She turned on her heel and walked away down the hall. She thought she was walking toward a massive financial payout. She had no idea that I was summoning Dr. Richard Vance to that meeting. She had no idea that her 4-year fraud was about to explode. I stepped into my study and closed the door behind me. I dialed the direct office number of Dr. Richard Vance. When his assistant answered, I spoke in a clear, measured voice. I requested an urgent personal meeting regarding Leo's medical records. I mentioned the monthly wire transfers from Vance Medical Consulting. There was a sudden, terrified silence on the other end of the line. The trap was set, and the jaw was about to snap shut. 10 minutes passed, in complete silence inside my office. My desk phone rang. The caller identity displayed an unlisted private number. I lifted the receiver calmly. I did not speak first. A heavy, shaky breath sounded through the line.
Who is this?
The voice belonged to Dr. Richard Vance. He sounded panicked. His medical authority was completely gone. I kept my tone steady. I am Daniel. There was a sharp gasp on the other end.
What do you want?
Here is update 1. I laid out the facts without emotion. 0.00% match on the paternity test. $5,000 transferred every single month for 4 years. Bank accounts registered under Vance Medical Consulting. Silence fell over the call again. I could hear his ragged breathing.
Listen to me carefully. We can handle this privately.
He tried to offer financial hush money immediately.
I can double those payments. Just keep my name out of your legal filings.
I smiled quietly in my empty office. He believed everything had a price tag. He thought money could erase 4 years of fraud. I cut him off with cold precision. You will attend the settlement meeting on Friday. Dr. Vance stammered in shock.
What?
I delivered my terms clearly. You will sit in that conference room. You will not tell Olivia about this call. He attempted to argue.
My wife will find out if I go there.
I answered without hesitation. If you refuse, these audit documents go to your hospital board tonight. I added one final condition. Your wife's legal team will receive a copy as well. The trap was absolute. A public scandal would destroy his medical practice. It would strip away his wealth and social standing. He had everything to lose. He swallowed hard before responding.
Fine, I will be there.
I hung up the phone immediately. I placed the receiver back on its stand. The first target was secured. An hour later, I met my attorney in the city center. We sat inside a private glass office. I spread the certified DNA report across the desk. I placed the financial audit logs right beside it. My attorney reviewed the documents in silence. He looked up at me with genuine respect. He confirmed that Olivia had no legal standing left. Her demand for 70% of my assets was based on fraudulent claims. Her marriage was built on a deliberate deception. Under family law, paternity fraud invalidates spousal support claims. We drafted the counter-settlement documents right then. We prepared a full preservation order for all joint accounts. We structured a clean legal separation. I also directed my attorney to set up a private trust fund. The trust was designed exclusively for Leo's future education and medical care. Olivia would have zero access to those funds. I was cutting her out completely while protecting the child. That evening, I returned home at 6 o'clock. Olivia was waiting in the dining room. She had placed 2 red folders on the table. She looked at me with an arrogant smirk.
My lawyer finalized our settlement terms.
She tapped the paper with her long fingernails.
Sign it now, so we do not waste time on Friday.
I did not take the pen she offered. I looked at her with complete calm. My silence was a weapon. She mistook my composure for resignation. She crossed her arms and sneered.
You were always so passive, Daniel. That is why you lost.
I nodded slowly without breaking eye contact. I spoke in a gentle voice. We will sign everything at your attorney's office on Friday. Olivia laughed out loud.
Suit yourself.
She gathered her folders and walked upstairs. She was convinced she had won total victory. She had no idea what was waiting for her in that conference room. I walked into Leo's room later that night. He was sleeping under his favorite blue blanket. I sat on the edge of his small bed. I adjusted his pillow quietly. My heart felt heavy, but my mind was entirely sharp. I was not his biological father, yet I had raised him with total devotion for 4 years. I would make sure his future remained safe from her greed. Thursday passed quickly. I packed 3 formal leather binders inside my briefcase. The first binder contained the original DNA paternity audit. The second binder held the forensic wire transfer records. The third binder contained our legal counterdemands and asset freezes. Everything was organized with surgical precision. Friday morning arrived with gray skies over the city. Olivia dressed in an expensive cream suit. She put on dark sunglasses and checked her makeup in the hall mirror. She looked like someone preparing for a victory parade. We drove to the financial district in separate cars. I pulled into the underground garage at 9 o'clock. I took the elevator up to the 12th floor. The glass doors opened to the law firm lobby. My attorney was already waiting near the reception area. He gave me a brief, confident nod. We walked down the long carpeted hallway toward Conference Room B. Through the frosted glass, I saw a tall man sitting at the end of the table. Dr. Richard Vance was staring at his phone with pale cheeks. Sweat glistened on his forehead despite the cold air conditioning. A few seconds later, footsteps echoed behind us. Olivia walked down the hallway with her attorney beside her. She held her head high and smiled triumphantly.
Ready to surrender, Daniel?
I opened the heavy wooden door for her without a word. She stepped inside the room, still holding her smile. Then her eyes landed on Dr. Vance, sitting across the table. Her smile froze instantly. Olivia stood frozen in the doorway. The color drained from her face completely. Her arrogant smile vanished in a fraction of a second. She stared at the man sitting across the glass table. Dr. Richard Vance refused to meet her gaze. He kept his eyes glued to his hands. His fingers were trembling uncontrollably.
Why are you here, Richard?
Her voice shook with sudden panic. Dr. Vance swallowed hard and remained silent. He was too terrified to speak a single word.
Daniel, what is the meaning of this?
She turned her glare toward me. I did not flinch. I stayed seated in my high-backed leather chair. My hands rested flat on the polished conference table. I pointed to the empty chair beside her attorney. "Take your seat, Olivia." Her attorney looked confused. He checked his meeting notes with a frown. He had expected a simple negotiation over my career earnings. Instead, he walked into a high-stakes ambush. Olivia pulled out the chair slowly. She sat down on the edge of the seat. Her confidence was entirely shattered. She realized that her secret was exposed. Yet she did not know the full extent of my preparation. She thought this was merely a confrontation about her infidelity. She had no idea that her entire financial foundation was already dismantled. To understand this moment, you must look at what I did 48 hours ago. While Olivia was preparing her demands, my forensic team worked around the clock. My investigator uncovered a hidden real estate transfer. 6 months ago, Olivia leased a luxury downtown condominium. The lease was registered under a private shell company. She used our joint credit profile as a financial guarantee. She planned to move into that luxury residence after stripping my assets. She assumed I would never check the secondary commercial registries. She underestimated my attention to detail. I contacted my family estate lawyer immediately. My late parents had established a private sole property trust for me years ago. Those trust assets were completely separate from our marital property. I directed the trust to purchase the primary mortgage debt of that shell entity. I bought out her landlord's financial position overnight. I became the primary lien holder of her secret condo. Then I filed an emergency motion under state anti-fraud statutes. I submitted the certified DNA audit and the monthly wire transfer records to the court judge. The judge issued a temporary asset preservation order. Every joint bank account was frozen immediately. Her private offshore account was flagged for civil fraud investigation. She had zero liquidity left. Now, back in the conference room, it was time to execute. I pulled the second black leather binder from my briefcase. I slid it across the glass table toward her attorney. The gold embossing on the cover caught the overhead lighting. "Here is update 2. My voice was low and perfectly steady. Olivia's attorney opened the binder with hesitant fingers. He scanned the top page. His eyes widened in genuine shock. He flipped rapidly through the certified court orders. He looked at the mortgage debt acquisition deeds. He looked at the frozen account notifications from the state bank board. He leaned close to Olivia's ear. He whispered to her in a harsh, urgent tone. I watched her face as her attorney explained the reality. Her secret condo was in default. I owned the underlying debt. I had already issued an immediate eviction notice against her shell company. Her joint credit access was completely revoked. Her private accounts holding Vance's money were locked by court order.
You cannot freeze my accounts.
She slammed her hand against the table.
This is illegal.
Her lawyer put a hand on her arm to quiet her. He looked across the table at me with defeat in his eyes. He knew the legal game was over. Paternity fraud combined with unauthorized joint credit guarantees constituted severe bad faith. No judge would award her spousal support. In fact, She was now personally liable for civil fraud damages. I looked at her attorney calmly. Your client used marital credit to back an extramarital shell setup. Your client accepted $5,000 monthly to hide a child's true lineage. Explain the civil fraud statutes to her. Olivia turned to Dr. Vance in desperation.
Richard, say something. Tell them this is a mistake.
I had no choice, Olivia. He has everything. He has the DNA files and the bank records.
Dr. Vance looked at me with pleading eyes.
Please, Daniel, do not send those papers to the hospital board.
My career will be finished. My medical license will be revoked. I looked at him without a shred of pity. He had helped build a 4-year deception. He cared only about protecting his own social status. He was a coward, hiding behind his wealth. I adjusted my tie slowly. I let the silence hang in the room for 10 long seconds. The power dynamic had completely inverted. 10 minutes ago, Olivia thought she controlled my future. Now, she was facing total financial ruin. She had no house. She had no cash access. She had no legal leverage. Her attorney sighed deeply and closed the binder. He looked at me with a tired expression. He asked what my final settlement conditions were. I reached into my briefcase one last time. I pulled out the third and final binder. This binder contained the unconditional legal surrender documents. It contained the complete waiver of all marital asset claims. It also contained the irrevocable protective trust agreement for Leo. I held the binder in my hands without placing it down. I looked Olivia straight in the eyes. Her hands were shaking. Tears of anger and humiliation welled in her eyes. The ultimate moment of accountability was here. I leaned forward slightly across the table. I prepared to deliver the final ultimatum that would end her deception forever. I placed the third leather binder in the center of the conference table. The metallic clasp clicked sharply against the polished glass. The sound echoed in the silent room. I looked directly across the table at Olivia and Dr. Vance. I kept my posture straight and my face calm. Here is Update 3. My voice was low, clear, and unyielding. I opened the binder to the first section. I exposed the official forensic paternity audit report. The 0.00% matching probability was highlighted in red. Beside the audit lay the unconditional legal surrender agreement. I slid the open binder toward Olivia's attorney. He adjusted his glasses and began reading the document. The room fell into complete silence. The agreement demanded an immediate waiver of all spousal asset claims. Olivia would receive no alimony, no equity, and no joint savings. She would relinquish every claim to my property. In exchange, I agreed to withhold criminal and civil fraud filings. I also included an enforceable child trust clause. Dr. Vance was required to establish an irrevocable trust for Leo. The trust would cover Leo's medical, educational, and living expenses. An independent corporate bank would manage the funds exclusively. Neither Olivia nor Dr. Vance would ever have access to the capital. Only Leo would receive the assets upon reaching adulthood. Dr. Vance read the trust terms with pale lips. Sweat dripped down his temple onto his collar. He looked at me with open panic.
If I sign, this stays private?
Met his eyes with a cold, steady gaze. Sign it now. Dr. Vance did not hesitate. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a fountain pen. His hands trembled violently as he signed his name on every marked page. He did not look at Olivia a single time. He was driven by pure self-preservation. He cared only about hiding his affair from his wife and his medical board. Once the final page was signed, he stood up abruptly. He grabbed his briefcase from the floor. He rushed out of the conference room without uttering another word. The heavy wooden door shut behind him. Olivia watched him abandon her in utter disbelief. Her face turned completely white. Her co-conspirator had fled to save himself. She was left sitting alone at the long glass table. She turned her head slowly toward her attorney.
Fix this immediately.
Her voice lacked its previous authority. Her attorney lowered his pen and let out a long sigh. He leaned in close and spoke to her in a quiet tone. He told her that her legal standing was entirely destroyed. Paternity fraud and commercial loan guarantees created massive civil liability. If she took this case to trial, she faced complete public ruin. He advised her to sign the surrender papers without delay. Olivia stared at the black signature lines on the desk. Her posture slumped forward. Her arrogant demeanor vanished completely. Tears of frustration and shame filled her eyes. She realized that her 4-year deception had met its absolute end. She had no money, no leverage, and no retreat. Her hand trembled as she picked up the pen. She signed her name across the final settlement pages. My attorney gathered the signed contracts and verified every page. He placed the official notary seals on the documents. The legal severance was complete, binding and final. I stood up slowly from my leather chair. I adjusted my suit cuffs and picked up my briefcase. I did not celebrate. I did not raise my voice or mock her. True power is silent. I looked down at Olivia one last time. She remained motionless, staring at the empty table. I turned on my heel and walked out of the room. I walked down the quiet, carpeted corridor toward the main lobby. My attorney walked beside me with a satisfied smile. We shook hands near the elevator bank. I stepped into the elevator cabin as the doors slid shut. I rode down to the ground floor in absolute serenity. I walked out of the high-rise tower into the bright afternoon sunlight. The air felt clean and refreshing. The heavy cloud of suspicion and deception was gone forever. I drove straight back to my suburban neighborhood. I unlocked the front door and stepped into the quiet house. Leo ran out of his bedroom when he heard my footsteps. He smiled brightly and called my name. I knelt down on the wooden floor and held out my arms. He wrapped his small arms around my neck. A wave of warmth filled my heart. Biological DNA does not define real fatherhood. I had held his hand through 4 years of growth. I was his real father, and I would protect his innocence forever. His future was now fully secured through the independent trust. Over the following month, the final resolution unfolded quietly. Olivia moved into a small rented studio and took an entry-level retail job. Dr. Vance resigned quietly from his hospital position to avoid public scandal. I focused my energy entirely on my executive role and raising my son. Our home became a sanctuary of truth, stability, and peace. I had dismantled a 4-year deception without ever losing my self-control. I stood by the window that evening, watching the quiet street outside. True strength is not proven by loud anger, but by the quiet resolve to protect what truly matters. If you enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe for more daily stories.